I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. What I want you to do is go tell somebody that we're meeting here right now. Let your friends know, let the world know that it's about to go down. It's a conversation, I call it a robust conversation, a place where we connect, we share, we think about, we act on the notion of healing. We call this the Healing Circle on Fridays. And we do that in conjunction with our partnership with the African American Child Wellness Institute, an organization led by Dr. Bravada Garrett-Akinsanya. She also is the principal in Breakins Consulting and Psychological Services. And with her and through her, we convene every week on Friday just to talk about the health of our people, about healing and what it means in the context of all of the challenges, COVID-19, structural, persistent, pervasive, institutional racism, poverty, failures, but also successes in education. And at the end of the day, we talk about being with each other in a way that sustains and nurtures life living, not only for us, but our families, for the future, and in a ways that respects the past, the history that has brought us this far. Let me begin by saying hello to my friend and writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray. Brenda, how you doing?
Fine. How are you? Happy Friday.
I am well. Dr. B is going to be on in a couple of seconds, and we'll change the modality when she arrives. She gives us a grounding in the healing circle technique of using the talking stick. But before she's here, let me introduce two other people to you, Brenda, and to our viewers. First is my cousin, Jillian Mosley. Jillian Mosley works and lives in Oakland, California, and is simply a classic chip off of the same block I'm a chip off of, a person that has a lot of opinions, a strong voice, who's fearless, and who's fun to be around. Jillian, good afternoon and welcome. So good to see you.
Sounds like someone I know, Jillian.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
There's definitely a familial trait that
I
running through there.
And let me introduce Greg Battle. Greg Battle, I call a companion. He and I met on the Narrative Nubia platform. And it's something that I keep talking about every day, all the time. I'm so impressed with the work, the vision, and the possibilities created by Karen Hunter, Dr. Karen Hunter, and Dr. Greg Carr. Dr. Karen Hunter, the journalist, and Dr. Greg Carr, the head of the Africana Studies Department at Howard University. Together, they've created a project they started off calling In Class with Carr. Saturday mornings for now 130 weeks or so. They've been convening important, wonderful, powerful discussions about history, about culture. And the idea behind theirs is, how do we jailbreak? How do we break out of the strictures of social structures that mean us no good, that demean, that marginalize, that destroy? And how do we instead discover what they have described as a governance structure, and that is a system of knowing who we are to each other, what we are to each other, and how do we do things that change the world, that free us, liberate us. Well, Greg Battle is one of the people I've met in that platform. Greg, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. There he is. Hey, Greg.
Good afternoon. Peace and blessings to everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join you.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for your presence in the Nubia and narrative world. So let me begin just by asking you, Greg, kind of describe yourself and what's on your mind today, what you work with, and how we both have connected through Nubia and narrative.
Well, generally, I'd like to address the issue of how we can conversate with each other. Everybody brings their knowledge, and what they've been through. And things happen differently in different cities around the United States. And it has always been that way. And when you talk to the younger people, they think that everybody had the same knowledge at the same time, made the same decisions, and trying to engage them in a conversation to help them understand that though you know what you know, somebody might know differently. That doesn't make you wrong. It just means that they see it from a different perspective. And we need to share as many perspectives as we can so that we can combat this oppression and colonization that's going on this planet. So basically, my ministry is to save the world one conversation at a time.
Conversation is key. Jillian, introduce yourself and talk about who you are and what you're bringing in terms of creativity and service to community and to the world.
Yes. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jillian Mosley. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the Director of Orientation and Family Programs at Mills College at Northeastern University. And I'm a double alum of Mills College. I did my undergrad there and just recently finished my master's in educational leadership as well at Mills. And in my role, it really is about welcoming students into the community and giving them a sense of belonging. And within that, that's very much grounded then in not just bringing them to the campus, but and welcoming them into the campus, but also into the community as a whole, and trying to really lay that groundwork for them to think of themselves as citizens of the world, to really think of themselves as potential engines for change, and finding ways for them to express and connect with one another in a way that is life-affirming and positive and just, but helping them work with those critical thinking skills and really laying that foundation, and then that initial opening of the door then is really about then them really be feeling connected to the place and the space and the people that are here, and seeing themselves as valued, welcome members of our community and family. And it's been interesting to do that within the context of Mills has recently merged with Northeastern University. So now I'm getting to spread the word a little bit even further far afield. So it's an exciting time right now for us and for Mills.
Well, you also are a noted culinary artist, among
true.
things. Something about your work in that field.
Yeah. So before I embarked on my higher ed career and journey, I was a chef for many years and caterer and event planner. And it's kind of been the running thread through my life is really about how am I engaging someone, whether it's I'm creating a meal for them and finding connections not only to them, not just with their palate and that idea of nourishment, but also bringing that back into being grounded in when you explore a cuisine, that there's a lineage to it, and what are you doing to kind of honor that lineage, and being respectful on just exploring different cuisines and presenting that as something that is it's just wonderful to share with one another. And then that really has carried over into the work that I do now.
Let me bring in Dr. Bravada Garrett-Akinsanya and Dr. Oliver Williams. Dr. B is our leader. Dr. B, how are you? Good to see you. And I always love to take this point to ask you to ground this conversation in the protocol that we created around being the healing circle. So I'm going to pass the talking stick to you and explain what that is to our new friends. You unmute, Dr. B. There we go.
Thank you. It's just delightful to be here. And when I heard the Sister Jillian talking about food, I said, "Oh, let me get on that stage," because I love the idea of nourishing spirits, and that's what we do here on the Healing Circle every Friday at 1. And I'd like to just start by talking about the protocol that Baba McFarlane just introduced, and that is that we start out in a virtual circle because in our African tradition, we talk in circles. And the reason we honor circles is there is no hierarchy, that everyone has access to the center of power, which is the center of the circle. So every voice matters. In addition to that, we also understand that from our African culture, we are orderly. So we use a virtual talking stick to pass the conversation from one to the other. And as we do that, everyone has voice, everybody's opinion matters, and we share that power, which is the talking stick. You may ask for it, but it will come your way eventually either way. And the third thing that I think is probably one of the more sacred things is that we show respect for our elders, and we respect the community elders in the space as we, look at growing and changing and healing. We're like the Sankofa bird. We can't go forward without looking back. And so in the circle and in the work that we do, we honor our elders. And we honor our elders because they're closest to our ancestors. And we stand on those shoulders, and we honor our ancestors because they're closest to the Creator. And so through that process of honoring transgenerationally, we get to grow and change and lead and help each other. And so the loving part about this circle is that we recognize that in this space is the African concept of consubstantiation. That means all living things are connected, that we're connected to each other, we're connected to the earth, and everything around us is a part of us. So we honor that in this circle. And the healing part of the circle is recognizing that your voice and that your spirit, which goes above all things, is honored in this space. So with that, I want to welcome everyone to the Healing Circle. I want everyone to know that you belong, and the libations of our spirit are poured into this sacred space. So with that, I'll pass the talking stick back to Baba L. McFarlane.
Well, let's bring in Dr. Williams, too. Dr. Williams, always good to see you. I'm going to jump right in and pass the talking stick to you. What's on your mind? And then we'll go around and talk to Brother Greg that you're going to just be meeting, and my cousin Jillian, who you're just meeting. I want to, when I come to you, Jillian, just tell people how glad I am that you introduced me to 23andMe. And we'll talk about that down the road as well. Dr. Williams, I'm passing the talking stick to you.
Just hello, everybody. Just greetings, and I'll just get into the conversation after I hear from Jillian.
Hello, Dr. Williams. Nice to meet you. So yeah, I'm Al's little cousin. But he's more like an uncle. And just been a positive influence in my life, even when we are not in near proximity. I always feel his love. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Are you in the Twin Cities?
No, I'm in Oakland, California. I'm in my office right now on the campus of Mills College, and where I work and am an alum as well.
Okay. Do you know the organization called A Safe Place?
Sounds familiar. Do they do work with children?
They do work around domestic violence.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard of it, but I'm not super familiar.
Yeah, they do some good work. So
fantastic. Yeah, I mean,
Oakland,
we have some amazing work that happens here.
Yeah.
Well, let me take the talking stick back and just say that Jillian, among many things, but also connected me to this genealogy path that I've been on. And she told me that she had done 23andMe and got me curious, interested, and I jumped right in and did that for me. And, the first person that pops up on our DNA relatives is me and Jill. And so we are growing out our connections to family people around the world and over generations. And I love the fact that in my mind, I've grown this idea that the genealogy, the DNA, is a tool for remembering. And by remembering, I mean not that you forgot something, but that something has been dismembered.
That's right.
History
Right.
and systems and institutions and people and cultures
Yeah.
have attempted to and thought they succeeded in destroying and dismembering our people, our personhood, but that the Creator, in her wisdom, in His wisdom, in its wisdom, uh, uh, provided a tool, a technology, a key that allows us to reassemble, to remember, to put the body back together again. And I
Amen.
tell you, that's what we are doing in our family, but across the world. I think that as we remember, we begin to discover both the source, the original intent, and the potential that we each carry in creating and authoring a future that is substantially different, that's beneficial. So, Brother Greg Battle, let me pass the talking stick to you because I want to hear more from you on, just as Jill talked about her ministry of cooking and the food, you're doing the same thing in a number of ways. One of them, you told me today, you're taking quilts to people around the community. I'm passing the talking stick to you, Greg Battle.
Okay, I'll take the talking stick. The latest venture that God has me on is in honor of my wife. She was diagnosed with cancer. She's calling for her miracle, and she's not had any negative effects from the chemo. But we are also engaged with our first grandson, and he's going to be 2 years old in December, and he goes to daycare. And so, as an elder in an urban Mennonite church, I have some connections in different areas of Ohio. And there are a group of ladies that um, make quilts. Matter of fact, I have a piece of one right here that it's just for the children to
Wow.
take their naps on. Parents get busy in their day getting their kids ready to go to daycare, and or you forgot to bring the blanket, or the blanket was soiled. So they have not only extended it to daycares, but I'm also touching treatment centers and shelters, especially battered women's shelters where there's kids and need, and just that handmade love that they put into this quilt that they could wrap around them is
How
is
cool.
something for them. Um, that's one of the many ministries that I've had in my time, uh, even before I came to the church. Family is very important, so I'm still dealing with taking care of my mom and dad. And you might have noticed I had a phone call from my mom. She's got to get her to the dentist because she still wants to brush her teeth in her mouth. And she's 88 years old. And she's going to do that because that's what she wants to do. And so she and my dad are a cute little couple. My dad's been dealing with dementia for 26 years. And he still knows everybody that he loves by name, sight, and sound.
Wow.
He still tells me every time I leave him now, call me if you need me. Call me if you need me. And there's nothing like when you pour love into people, for those people to have a chance to pour love back into you. And I think that that's one of the messages that we can share with our youth, with our young adults, with those who are in their 30s and 40s and think they know and think they could do better than us. You have to understand that we all make the best decision possible in the circumstance. And with that, I'm going to pass the talking stick back to the host.
And you can pass it to anybody. So don't, we're all owners of this
Oh,
space.
well, then let me hear from Dr. Brenda Lyle-Gray.
Well, I'm not a doctor, but I'll take it. 40
Okay.
years in education, so I'll take it. I just want to welcome Jillian and Greg. Do you have any relatives in Columbia, Missouri? That was my first teaching, was under Muriel Battle. And I
No,
never
I
will
don't.
forget her. Yeah.
No, I
But
don't.
anyway, those blankets sound great. That is wonderful. And especially when you got to the shelters and the women. I've been watching some of the rescue down in Florida. And that's one of the crushing things, is to watch the young children that just don't understand what's going on. But boy, what brotherhood and sisterhood. People are out there late at night without any lights or whatever. So I think of those blankets, Greg, and what those children would just love to just be cuddled up. So nothing short when it comes to love.
Right.
And Dr. B talks about it all the time, about how our children need those hugs. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, let me take it back. You mentioned that your dad is experiencing dementia, and when you said that in your first communication to me, it resonated because my mother is experiencing dementia as well. She's 94. She's here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I know that dementia, Alzheimer's, runs in our family. And so I think I sent a note back to you, Greg, saying, I have the feeling, I feel like I'm just kind of waiting for my turn. I figure, when's it going to be my turn? I figure it's coming. I could be wrong. And I'll say this just to, number one, acknowledge that, all of us are all affected all the time by everything. That's what I think. But this is specific in my family through my mom. And I remember aunts and uncles and cousins that as they aged went through this dementia. And so my family is always watching me to see if I'm forgetting stuff or if I'm repeating myself. And I appreciate that. I think probably people feel that's annoying, but I'm grateful that they are. And the truth of the matter is, though, I have my own idea that, I'm on a path that in this regard, I don't control, but I likely am going to experience. So Dr. B and Dr. Williams, how does an Al McFarlane approach tomorrow and the next day with the thought that you likely will become incapacitated at some point in time? How do you plan for that? Do you plan for it? Do you embrace it? Do you ignore it? What are the strategies for moving forward and for not being immobilized, because you fear? What do you think? Dr. B, I'm going to pass it to you.
I thank you so much. Yeah, my mother died with Alzheimer's. My father lived to be 83. She lived to be about 82. And what I remember is that she didn't forget us, but she would definitely forget a whole lot of other things. And I remember how she was in and out. She was present and not so present. And the lesson that it taught me, so what she really died of was cancer, smoking cigarettes since she was 15. Mm-hmm. And, but when she got the Alzheimer's, what I saw happen is that she began to get disoriented more like in the evenings. So I started studying it and ended up actually working for some nursing homes who were caring for elders who had dementia or needed memory care. And what I found out is that the core essence of who they are, if you stay there, they'll stay there. Hmm. And that part of them will show up. And it's almost like makes you grateful for the moment, for those moments of clarity, for the moments of when that personality will happen. And one of my best memories of my mom is we all had gone out back to Texas, all of her kids. We'd gone to have Thanksgiving with her. And we had to get a hotel, and the man gave us extra rooms so that we could have our Thanksgiving dinner together. And as has been our tradition for many, many years, after Thanksgiving dinner, we always would start singing Christmas carols. And my mother was a choir director, and she always had us harmonizing. And my brother Douglas, who I think you've met, Al, he really has a beautiful singing voice, but he would always be the clown. So as she was teaching us and as she was directing us and we were singing, my brother Douglas hit a bad note on purpose. And she said, "Douglas, don't mar, damn," and just hit him just like she would have been 13.
She remembered.
And I laughed so hard. And 3 months later, she was gone. But we all had her for that time. And so I say, just make sure you stay present and that you have your life surrounded by people who just adore you, which I know your family does, your community does. As long as they're around, you may forget, but they won't. Mm-hmm. And they'll make you always do what you're saying. Remember, they'll bring you back to you. And that's the part I think that is important. You may see them go off because my mom, she was a Christian woman, but one time we could tell she was getting dementia. She would not have patience. She cussed somebody out like a sailor about bringing her the wrong pair of shoes at the store. So we go, "What is it? That's somebody, you better get out of here." But you could always change her mind if you had a Snicker on you or some peppermint. She would go for that, and that would calm her down. But that part of that life, I'll never forget. It taught me to cherish the moment. That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
You know, I think my mother ended up getting dementia and then eventually Alzheimer's. And, you know, the thing that I talked to my sisters about is when my mother would start asking questions about people who had passed away or situations where she had some, when she's a bit more lucid, she, you know, understood what happened to him. But what my sisters tried to do, they thought they were doing her a favor, is continuing to remind her of things when she was forgetting. And then she relives it again, the sadness. So one of the things that I tried to encourage them not to do was to continue to remind her, and then to instead try to talk to her and then be soothing with her. Because every time you remind her, she relives it. And, you know, I didn't want to see my mom sad, you know. But the other thing is, I had a number of people in my either family or neighborhood that had dementia, but Alzheimer's as well, and including my mom. And then remember the things that would make us laugh, you know, because there were a number of things that would make us laugh associated with it. And so you would bring those things up. I had a neighbor who was like my godmother, and she sent me to the store that was about 2 blocks away, and I'm probably about 10, and she gave me $2. And in those days, if you got some bananas and you had $2, you got a lot of bananas, you know, got a bag full of bananas. So she sent me up the street, and I'm a kid, I don't know anything. So I get the bananas, and then I have to walk them 2 blocks back to the house, you know, just with my arms. And I took them back, and so instead of her, you know, she would usually give me a tip when she was a bit more lucid. But she gave me one of the bananas in the bags that were, you know, sort of falling apart. Or when I was trying to get into the house, I went through the basement window to get in, and then she called the police because she thought someone was breaking in. Then the police came, and they're knocking on the door, and I had to step out. And she asked my neighbor whether she knew me. And of course, she wasn't as lucid, so she said no. So my mom drove up and we settled it. But, you know, my mom was uh, wasn't quite as clear. And I'd go into the bedroom, or excuse me, go into her room because she was living with my sister then. And I'd say hello. And so they had Fright Night on or something like that. And so this vampire was coming out. And I said, "Hey, Ma, how you doing?" He said, "Shh, they'll hear you." So those moments where you get some levity out of it, but at the same time you love them, just the same.
That's right.
And so as those things happen to me, when they happen to me, I want to keep the levity, and hopefully my family will. And given my history with them, I know they will. And so just love them, and for myself, to sort of prepare myself for another stage in my life, when those things happen, and try to figure out how you can be nurturing and caring, and not have them sort of relive, the things that are challenging and uncomfortable. So that's my advice.
One of the things that always comes to my mind with my mom and dad is that my mom refuses to let anybody else care for my dad. And she constantly talks to him and asks him questions to make him try to remember, even though he can't. When's your birthday? His birthday was 2 days ago. And I went Monday. I said, "Dad, I'm going to tell you happy birthday now because I may forget." And that's a running thing. But what she does is keep him in his routine. And as long as he's in his routine, then life is good. We got the technology around them. My brother and I are taking care of them. We are their buffers. Anything the family wants of them has to go through us. And even though I'm the oldest, I think somewhere I read in the Bible that the older will serve the younger. And so he has the last word. And we just continue to pour love into them because they took care of us without complaint. And there was no drama in our house. So to just understand that you have to keep a circle of love around them and be that buffer for them so that they don't feel like they should have done something. They are the jewel. They are the ones being taken care of. And everybody adopts my parents. Everybody adopts my parents.
Yeah. That's one thing. I remember going to dinner at a friend's house several years ago. And there was their aged mother that they brought to the dinner. And what was so interesting to me is how loving the children were towards their parent, as they brought them to this event. But they're very attentive and very loving and caring towards that parent. And I always value families that behave that way towards their aged family members. I lost my mother-in-law in December, and she was the center. She, kind of held everybody together, and she taught me a number of things. I had my mom. When my mom passed away, my mother-in-law said, "Don't forget you have another mother."
Mm-hmm.
And but she was always that loving person and present, but she was that way for the entire family.
Amen.
And we miss her. But the thing that I think about is how one gets valued and how people can be around them and love them and the contributions that they make to the family.
But that's where you and Dr. B come in, Dr. Williams. is we oftentimes need people to talk to, because the pain of watching them go through this, it's really hard. My dad was 93, but the Alzheimer's had been going on for about maybe 5 years. And he was in independent living. And one of the nurses told my oldest daughter, he's putting milk in the cabinet. It's time. We need someone to be watching him on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So, and it hurts. I was an only child, so, they were it for me.
Yeah.
And I had a mother who was terminal in cancer. They had been married for 62 years. And it was like, this hurts. I don't know if both of them are going to go together. I don't know what's going to happen. But sometimes you need someone to talk to. And I was very negligent in that. I was like a warrior. I'm going to take care of this. And my daughters are very strong young ladies. But this one hurt because he was such an instrumental father and grandfather in the three of our lives. And to see them suffer like this and lose all of those good times, it hurts. So we shouldn't put ourselves through the fact of hurting alone. So
Right.
just wanted to add that.
Well,
Right.
a person that you want to read too is Dr. Paul Rosenblatt. And Dr. Paul Rosenblatt writes things about stages of grief, and and around death, and so Kubler-Ross writes about
Yeah, I've read some of that.
yeah, but Paul Rosenblatt too talks about stages of grief in the context of death.
Jill, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think too, because not only do we have our shared McFarlane side of Alzheimer's, but then it's also for me on my maternal side. And so my maternal grandfather passed away from Alzheimer's too. And, and hearing all of this, it really, it reminds me of how important it is for us to make sure that we're fully present, and that we're able to be in the moment, especially when someone that we love so dearly, and we're holding their memories for them, that the best thing that we can do with them is to just be fully present in the now, because that's all we have. But that's an important lesson, not just in dealing with these situations in grief, but also in moments of joy and moments when you just, life is flowing along, but really being able to just appreciate what's happening now for what it is, and just making space for that.
Yeah. One thing I think about as well is, so I lost my mother before my wife Sonia lost her mother. And the things that I picked up was the fact that there are different ways that you should appreciate them, and appreciate them when they have more of their faculties versus when they start to lose some of the faculties.
Yep.
And that and so I think the thing I thought about with Sonia was that I remember with my mother was, appreciating the fact that I could talk to my mother. I used to talk to my mother every day. And so as she started to lose her capacity to engage in dialogue, those were things that I missed. And then I had to figure out who else I could talk to more frequently, and made a connection. But, those are things I tried to subtly share with Sonia, as she was going through missing, we called her Mita. Her mom, her nickname was Mita. And when Sonia and Sonia and I were a little bit different. I used to talk to my mother every day. Sonia would talk to her mother every week, but Sonia started to miss some of that, and then we would go to Puerto Rico every year. Maybe used to go twice a year, but once a year to go visit her family in Puerto Rico. And then when we got there, Mito, she was a comedian. I remember she used to do Puerto Rican rap, and so did joke, and so like she would do say La Escuela, so he'd talk about the school, and then she'd make up stuff associated with that. And she's always sort of the life of the party to me. But those are some things that you miss about the person and how sweet she was and engaging she was. So I think adjusting, but also recognizing that as you lose some things, there are things that you have to recognize. I think and appreciate the things that you have while they're present.
One of the important things, especially the devastation within the family, but for those who are listening that have the opportunity, when you're talking with their elders, go ahead and use that technology you got right there and hit the record button on that voice recorder, because they can tell you stories in their recollection when they were children, and that's how certain things were passed down as we all dealt with the trauma of what this oppressive society has dealt us.
That's right.
They're the society's mission, and I just labeled it social structure. Okay, the public facing, their whole emphasis is to keep us fragmented so that we do not unite as a people. And we are all united in our circumstance and in our trauma. And to love on parents, to love on your grandparents. I tell you, it's important for you children to keep asking the questions, because it makes them remember, it makes them think,
Sure does.
and then they can hold on to it a little bit more. But once you've seen that it's gone, then you don't force the issue. You just continue loving and talking with it. And my mom had to go to a chiropractor yesterday, and my dad's sitting in the car, and he's like, where's your mom's purse? She needs me in there to hold her purse, because whenever she gets in there, she gives me the purse and say, here, you hold this. He must have said that 8 times in the 10 minutes. And then all you can do is say, she got her purse. It's all right. It's not back there. And you keep loving, redirect the conversation and talk about some other things.
Yeah.
My parents are so special. If I told you their story, it would make you laugh. It would make you laugh. Let's shorten it into this simple thing. The grandson of a fan of baseball got to marry the daughter of the player on the team that he idolized.
Wow.
And that's my mom and dad.
Wow.
They were meant to be.
They were meant to be, and they still are. They still are.
And Mr. Battle, how dare you to talk about the oppressive nature of our country? Oh, I'm appalled.
Don't be appalled, because it has spread around the world. And we need to understand that it's not just because you don't experience the exact same pain that someone else doesn't mean that it hurts them less.
Right.
You know, And
That's true.
we live in the belly of the beast. Those colonizers who have divided up the continent use us as the blueprint of how they could fracture and erase a culture without having to disconnect them, dismember them from their circumstance. So, you know, for us to come together and understand that the world is Africa, the world was one continent before it broke up, and that was Africa. So the whole world is black. They just don't know it.
There you
And they're
go.
scared of it. So
Go.
I can show up unapologetically black because I'm too old to be scared or intimidated at this point.
Tell
I'm
me
like
about it.
Mr. McFarlane waiting in line. So, you know, it is what it is. But I have to tell you the truth. I call myself Mr. Old Guy. And everybody said, well, you're not old and you shouldn't do that. I'm like, this is respect to my grandparents, because both my grandfathers used to tell me, you must not think I know anything because I'm so old. I said, don't you know I didn't get to be this old not knowing nothing?
And that,
And that I've lived long enough to understand. So when I talk to the youth, I say, I'm Mr. Old Guy, I don't know nothing, but this is what I do know. And we engage the conversation. It is a great opener.
Greg, it was 4 of us that grew up in the same neighborhood on 28th in Indiana, I was Indiana, and Al and his cousins were Brooklyn, but we were on 28th. But we don't hesitate to tell people, yep, we turned 75 this year. And we
Amen.
just feel fortunate that we have been able to live this long and endured some of the things that we have. I mean, Al's doing quite well now, but it wasn't always that way. He had struggles, and that enemy was around beating him up. And I can't even begin to tell you what I've been through. But I am so proud to be 75 and do not hesitate to tell anyone. I look at Miami or Florida, and I'm saying, look at how many people might not have the opportunity to get where we are. So, and whoever we can pay it forward to, you know, and especially our youth.
That's right.
And I think that's what the conversation, some of my former students watch this program. They love it. And, you know, it's good, that intergenerational connection where we can help them and school them. And, you know, just the history behind your blankets. How beautiful is that?
It's an honor just to be able to do it, you know.
I know. So, you know, that's one thing I think that our ancestors did teach us in all of our families is about gratitude day to day.
That's right.
Because we never know what's going to happen. So beautiful stories. Love
Greg,
it.
Greg, you talked about creating a group of friends out of our experience in Nubia and in narrative. Talk about that for a second.
Well, there came a time when a group of us, just like you and I had talked in the chat, there was a voice that called us, and how are we going to take what we are making and make it something tangible, something that we can create and find safe space. We need to create a space that's safe for Black people to have conversations, because we are not in agreement and we all see things differently, but to learn how to build community. And so out of that, we got on WhatsApp, and we have our little group on there. And what we're doing is trying to find ways that we're going to feed these people. That's our first order of business. As we shape community where everybody in the circle is as important as anyone else in the circle. that your brick is just as needed as my brick. And if we don't see things the same, that's okay, because it's the community that we're here to serve. And that in itself has allowed us to create friendships across the globe, in different spaces through different generations and circumstance. And that loving, that having a place to talk, to take that talk that you talked about, where you how you're feeling and what you're going through, and just having a community that's going to love on you through the process while you do what you have to do. We're here to support you. If you need help, reach out. And that's how we build community. We need to build those communities around the United States. We need to build them in safe spaces, and that way we can start the process of healing, the process of understanding that Sankofa, what it means to take that lesson from back there and bring it forward to plan what we're going to do. We need to take that circle of community that was on the continent that we got disconnected from and learn how to be in the circle, not the leader of the circle, not being beat up on the circle. We just another part of the community. And when you do that and you look around in those cultures, then you look at the woman king as something that's always been, because I was raised by one. Every time my dad said, "It's my castle and I'm the king of it," my mom said, "Well, I'm the queen and what I say goes anyway." It was no argument. So let's not be torn as we project on somebody else. Let's come together and build spaces so we can connect our cities and realize what happens in Los Angeles is different than what happens in Cleveland, but sometimes it's not.
Exactly.
The oppression is the same. The fragmentation is the same. Keeping our voices from coming together so I can say, Jillian, that really hurt me. Did it hurt you? Did you ever go through that? Oliver, man, I can relate. If we can't share and communicate with each other, how are we going to come together?
I love what you've just done, because Brother Greg, you just actually described the tools that have transcended for thousands of years among African people. And that tool is around connection. And I was thinking about, what do we connect around? We connect around stories. We connect around our food. We connect around our hardships and our victories. And you've just named it. And I'm thinking, as we think of elders, with us, sometimes you don't even have to have words.
Right.
There's just a look or just a simple touch. So in our Africanness, that connection of looking, touching, smelling, hugging, all of those things, that's what sustains our lives. That's what gives value. That's right. Our presence, our in the now, in this moment, recognizing the gifts that are in front of us. And I love what you just said about that. It's just talking about how that gift, that touch, that spirit, it transcends everything else.
But Dr. B, think about that look that we got when we were in trouble with our parents.
There you go.
I never will forget. My dad would be in the choir stand and he'd look across that sanctuary. And if I was in the balcony doing something, I could feel that look. And, and they never had to say anything. They just looked. And I would say, uh-oh.
One thing that we failed to teach our children was that even though they did not spare the rod for us, I know what it is to have to walk across that field to go get that switch. Right.
And peel it.
But the reality was that wasn't the first time I was told
Yeah.
that they tried punishment. They tried taking things away from me. They tried and tried and tried, and I just kept pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope until you cross the line, and then they said, "Okay, go get me a switch. I can fix this."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too, Greg, that I value is the fact that if you've got somebody that's only got one way to deal with something, it's like if you have somebody that only knows how to spank,
Ooh.
that's a problem. I think the thing that most of our parents had is that they did not spare the rod. But what they also did was that they also used other gifts to be able to engage us and talk to us and explain to us what was going on, not just punishing us.
And you know what? Let me jump in just right quick because I'm getting, I since I work with kids so much, I studied our African culture, and I know that we are descendants of slaves. Many of us, we are. And we were colonized before that by white folks who did teach us about the Bible sparing the rod, and who did believe in hitting their kids. But I can tell you what happened to me. The first time I went to Nigeria, I was there for almost 2 weeks. I never saw a single child get a whooping. Mm-hmm. Do you know why? Because they were always surrounded by adults.
Right.
And every adult had equal power to you. So if
you got looks from more than your parents.
I'm telling you, and no parents gonna come and say, "What you do to that's my child." Everybody's got permission. So just think, you're sitting there, you see them acting a fool. They don't have to wait and get a whooping. They see your eye, and they go, "Whoa, wait a minute," because she's got equal access to take me to the bathroom and do a little something if she wants to. But what happened was what I call premeditated parenting. What I saw was prevention. That they were surrounded. Not that they didn't probably get whoopings at times, but I'm telling you, 2 weeks and a whole bunch of kids. They came to grown-up parties. I mean, you know how we lead the kids, and they were everywhere all the time. And they had such liberty. I remember my father-in-law had died. The kids were under the casket. They had the wake at the house. The kids were playing jacks. And you know I'm from the South. You're not in there with dead people and not be afraid. But they taught me that they saw death as the ultimate rite of passage.
Right.
That you're no longer bound by earth or time or space. That's the goal.
That's beautiful.
Let me jump in and take the opportunity. I wrote a piece that is a tribute to my brother Wayne. His birthday was a couple of days ago. And it kind of ties into all we're saying because it has to do with the question of definition of the power of language, the power of naming things and then doing things based on what you've named them. And the background to the piece I wrote is always in memory of the fact that when we were like really young, maybe Wayne was 3 years old, I might have been 5 or 7 or whatever, I was older. We were in a church in Kansas City, Kansas. We were Pentecostals, right? And it was one of those moments in a Pentecostal church where everybody's shouting and dancing and falling out, and just music, and praise, and all this energy is going on. So after a while, the energy dies down. The pastor, the leader, gets up and calms people down, and bit by bit, over some seconds or a minute or two, peace and quiet descend or ascend. And when it gets quiet, real quiet, there's only one sound that you hear. And that's this 3-year-old sitting on the edge on a wooden chair, watching all this whirl around him. And what he's saying is shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. And so I said, that's who you are. So this piece is called The Wayne of the World. Let me put Brother Wayne up here. Hold up. Let me share this real quick. I think this is it. Add to the screen. That's Brother Wayne right there. Move this out of the way. Okay, so I wrote And I don't call it a poem, it's a piece. And I meditated on the name, his name, Wayne, Wayne. But as he grew up, he changed his name, did music. He would say, I'm Wayne, Wain. Another way of saying, Wayne, I said, why? Whatever, that's cool. And so I say, this is the Wayne of the world, Wain of the world. Happy birthday, Wayne, 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 Wain. When I think of you, dear brother, I think of cosmic orchestras, pulsating with and issuing the rhythms of existence. I think about your name. I meditate, watching clarity emerge as the order of chaos, the all in all. Expansive, massive, endless, your music and your being, one and the same. Sun Ra taught us about semantic manipulation, the deception, peering past what is hidden in language. Your name reveals itself. Wayne, I spell it Wayne, Wayne, Wain. The next line, the way in. Wayne, the way in. The passageway, the way in. The path and the guide, the epiphany of the seeker, of the explorer, the searcher, the one trying to find the path. When you sing, Wayne, when you play, transformed, you say, I am the way, I am the path, I am way in. Like cosmic light, black light, where the rainbow begins, in parenthesis, I say Pharaoh Sanders transitioned a moment's notice ago on John Coltrane's birthday. Movement into ancestral realms amid the cacophony, this is the church, amid the cacophony, speaking in tongues, tongues of fire, a light, fire that does not burn but bathes celestial bodies, energy being itself. And the last line really switches to Wayne's voice. I come forth in the ensuing silence, a tiny voice magnified, born on the ascent of peace. Shake, rattle, and roll the way in. Tribute to Wayne McFarlane. Brother
Wow.
Wayne, we love you. And it's about connecting and naming. And so I think that all of our names are connected to sounds. And our parents, we're not English. None of us are. We're African. Our iterations of it. And so I think that the spirit gives us the sound, and the way we experience that through what we've been trained is in part a riddle. And if we study, meditate, contemplate, we learn and know and understand things differently. And we may understand something that is essential, that on the one level is obscure or hidden. So the point is think deeply, rediscover, recover. I'll close with one more thing. I keep making reference to my book that the writer I've become acquainted to through Nubia and through narrative. And the writer is Aikwe Arma. The book is called Wat Nut Shemsh. And it's called The Way of the Companions, right? And that's why I call this assembly Companions. It's a 2 paragraphs, a little bit long, but enjoy this. It says, of Africa's oldest ways of life and death, there are 2. One, the royal road, irresistibly attractive to power addicts, is lined with hierarchies, priests, armies, and bureaucracies. It gave Plato his liberal model for the slave-owning aristocracy, the template for imperial, colonial, and apartheid systems of social inequality. The way of companions is more ancient. It's been so long, but it's been so long suppressed, it sounds novel. It values knowledge above power. On that intelligent way, No one, Dr. B, is born superior, none inferior. It needs neither violence nor fraud. No person, gender, race, or tribe is discriminated against. It creates no unemployed, no homeless migrants, no refugees, no millionaires or destitutes, only equal humans. The way of companions follows the rational measure of Jehudi, the balanced justice of the Ma'at sisters, and the loving solidarity of Asar. The ancient way of companions is the way of the beautiful ones. Well, beautiful ones, so good to be with you. So good to be with you. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Nice meeting you, Jillian and Greg.
You as well. Thank you. Thank you, Al.
Come back and sit.